Hello, my name is Thomas. Welcome to British Culture, Albion Never Dies. This was a special episode looking back at my first time living overseas. As you'll know, if you've listened to previous episodes, the guiding question of this podcast is, what is Britishness? And the reason I have that question is because I spent a certain amount of my time living overseas. I spent 7 years in Turkish Cyprus, 6 years in China, a year in Saudi Arabia and Oman, and a bit of time in the US. And this has really formed my question, because everywhere I go, even if I'm the first Western person that an individual is encountering, then they often still have very, very firm and fixed views about the UK. So I'm just curious, where does this come from? Is it accurate? Is it, of course, subjective? And that's why I often ask for people to send in their questions and their perspectives, and very, very much appreciate all the messages that I get, whether it's on Instagram, Fleming Never Dies, emails, albionneverdies@gmail.com, or for the most part I appreciate the YouTube comments. Of course, if I get into a really controversial topic, and Turkish Cyprus tends to be one of them, then the YouTube comments can be, well, let's just say, interesting. And the reason I do focus on Turkish Cyprus is because that was my first time living overseas. Now, you'll perhaps have noticed I haven't released a podcast episode for 6 months. This is the first one in 6 months. This is a special bonus episode. And the reason is that my parents had a house out there. They've been living out there since 2001. And 6 months ago, my mother passed away. And if you've had a parent pass away, or a grandparent or a loved one, then you'll know the process of going through a house, sorting through everything. And we were doing all this in an unrecognised state, the other end of the Mediterranean, with many, many little complexities as well. So I've been keeping busy, but as I've been going through that process, I've also been, sorting through effects. Now, one of the things I found was a cassette tape. A cassette tape which recorded my impressions of living overseas at that time. So I moved out, I say, when I was 16. This is a few years in. I went out there. I didn't come back to the UK even for a visit for some years. And I had one month stay in the UK. And when I got back, I started recording an audio diary on cassette tape. So I got a cassette tape to USB converter so that I could listen back and transfer them. Of course, some of it's just family matters that are of no interest to anyone outside this room. But there are some things that I think are genuinely interesting. I've tried to pick these things out, and I'll be fading in myself in the modern day, and then myself from almost 20 years ago. I hope that you enjoy this. This is my first impressions on the UK, having just come back.
The bus services there have a day pass, and it only costs about £3. And so I was happily travelling about all day on the buses and seeing the various sights of a typical English city, and it was quite enjoyable being a tourist. A little strange being a tourist in my own country, and a little strange having everyone speak English. A couple of things that I'd gotten used to here and I hadn't realised. For example, it took a little mental jump to drink tap water, and there were just some things like going on the internet. Oh, it was so quick. And, just the general working of things, but...
Listening to that, I have a very strong memory of dealing with the big water bottles that we had regularly delivered to the house, manhandling them round into the kitchen or wherever it was needed, fixing the water pump to it, so you just pump out a glass of water, and the pump breaking regularly. It was just cheap materials. It was a very cheap plastic thing, but I had a good knack for fixing it. So I spent quite a lot of my life fixing that water pump. The idea of not needing to carry water bottles, not needing to fix a pump to it, not needing to fix the pump when it broke on a regular occasion, seemed like luxury. Now, part of the reason I was out in Turkish Cyprus at that age is that at the age of 14 I had become very, very ill indeed. A committee of teachers, doctors, headmasters, social workers, government officials and so on all decided that I simply was too sick to go to regular school. So I was pulled out of school, went to a pupil referral unit, focused on getting the essentials that were required. In fact, I added on a course, got very low GCSE marks for that, but I did my general certificate in secondary education, just a few, and then I left, went out to Turkish Cyprus, focused on recovery, but as I recovered, I started to focus more and more on what could I do, where could I go. I could see the value of an education, and an English education, in the people I saw around me, the English expatriates and so on. And I did have some local education. I went to Guinea American University and I took courses from there. So I'll refer in the next one to GAU, and that's an American university kind of locally. But I was very keen to get to a proper Western standard of education, and that's something that really dominated my life in these years.
But no, that was a fun party, and of course I came back. Then I had to sort out my academic arrangements. I'd been hoping to do an access course from London University, and that would be an external access course, so it would be done by post. But although this qualification is designed for people who have no previous qualifications, they said I needed more qualifications, and that was very annoying. There was a huge amount of back and forth, but they were very good with responding. It's obviously their written rules, and anyway, I was given the choice of spending another year at GAU, actively doing a GCSE, and I decided to do a GCSE Turkish as a foreign language, because I've been working so hard at that, and I really want to carry on. It will also give me a sort of idea of English workload again, since I haven't done English academic work for so long. But no, I've been doing 2 weeks worth of lessons on that, and although it's been hard, I've enjoyed it a great deal. Just finished a monster load of homework, and that's taken me quite a while, but I'm still enjoying it. It's nice to be doing something really worthwhile. I've been carrying on with the Turkish lessons, and I have to say I'm getting more and more used to it. Obviously, going from a place like GAU to a proper workload, GCSE standard, it's a bit of a shock, but it's one that I should have sooner or later, since I'm hoping to go back to an English university. But I have to say now I'm getting used to it. It's okay. I'm used to it. Or almost. And since coming back from England, I've been going on the internet a lot more. I don't know why I didn't before, but I've set up my own email address, and I've been using that a lot originally just for organising all the educational things, contacting London University and Southampton City College, but now I'm using it just for fun, and I've been onto the Private Eye website. Every page says, please buy the magazine, you'll get more stuff, but I just want the headlines to keep in contact. And looked at the British Muslim Council website. Obviously it's in the news a lot, so I wanted to see, but that one wasn't too interesting. Perhaps I'll try and find another one. I've been told about the state of things in GAU. They're supposed to have started about a month ago, and yet after a month they still haven't had lessons on some subjects. Many of the lessons were scheduled to be held in the building that's still being built. They have a fountain at that university, but unfortunately they don't have classrooms. When I went back to England, everyone was commenting on how tanned I was, which was a little strange, because for one thing, last time I was in England, or when I was living in England, people always used to comment on how pale I was, whereas when I went back I hadn't been sunbathing or anything, hadn't been in the full sun because it was summer and just way too hot, whereas now it's getting to just that sort of temperature when you can sunbathe, so I have. One of the greatest oddities I've seen since I've come back to Cyprus was in Ozankoy. Actually, it was outside of Ozankoy that I saw quite a while ago a dishwasher in the middle of an olive grove, so I suppose it's not surprising I should see something strange there again. But as we drove through, I saw what I thought to be a Warhammer shop. Now, Warhammer only have shops in cities of over 1 million people, because it takes about 1 million people to have enough people interested in gaming and models and all that sort of thing in order to support the shops. Obviously, I'm a little interested. And we drove past a few times, and every time I had a good peer, and sure enough I seemed to be right. So few days ago we stopped there, and it does sell Warhammer things, not too expensively. It's run by an English chap who's obviously a big fan, so I bought some modelling clay and I've been adapting a G.I. Joe figure, and now it's looking none too bad. I haven't painted it yet, of course, but wow, what a nice surprise. My Turkish lessons are continuing, which is probably why I'm so tired, but I am quite satisfied. I mean, just a few days ago Dad had a Halkın Sesi newspaper, The People's Voice, shoved through his window. It's one that's commemorating the death of Dr. Fazıl Küçük, the first Turkish Cypriot leader. It had a headline which I wasn't able to decipher. That was a few days ago, couldn't make head nor tail of it. But after today's lesson, by coincidence, we studied the very piece of grammar that was needed for me to understand the whole thing. So it's very satisfying. I'm having all sorts of things explained, and I'm enjoying it very much.
The next recording has a standard British preoccupation, the weather. And I refer to messages from my two older brothers. They didn't come out to Cyprus. They're 9 and 12 years older than me, so simply they were too old, they had their own lives. They had already moved out by the time we moved to Turkish Cyprus. But we stayed in touch. I sent regular emails whenever we could, snail mail, text messages, the occasional phone call, that kind of thing. So those are the two fellas that I refer to here.
I've received text messages from both Francis and Douglas telling me how freezing cold it is in England. I'm delighted to say. There was frost at midday, and Douglas texted me to say that it had been snowing during the night and that it was a winter wonderland. I texted them to say that Cyprus was having sunbathing weather, and it was. And the reply that I got from Douglas was a fine Anglo-Saxon word.
Well, I think the message I sent was absolutely irresistible to send, especially at that age, whilst the reply was fully understandable as well. So I've been living in Turkish Cyprus for about 5 years. I was really focusing here on learning Turkish. As I say, the first few years I'd just been too ill to do anything really. And our house was kind of going up the mountain from the main town. You come across a couple of villages and then go up the mountain a bit more from those villages, and you just have a collection of houses, and I was up there. So if I wanted to get into town, obviously a lift from either of my parents would be perfect, but if unavailable for any reason, I would cycle from my house down to the nearest village, which, you know, in 40-degree heat could be significant, but most of the time outside the heat of the day was fine. I just leave my bike in some olive groves, then take a bus. The buses didn't run on any particular schedule, which is maybe why I was so interested in the buses when I visited the UK. They just turn up when they turned up, and you hopped on, go down to town. So it would take me a couple of hours, actually, to get into the main town. Maybe an hour and a half if I was really lucky. Alternatively, sometimes the buses just wouldn't run for whatever reason. Turkish Cyprus has been under an international embargo since 1974 due to the history of conflict there, and which is why the comment section can get so lively at times between the Turks and the Greeks. Of course, they speak different languages, they have different histories, they have different religions, they have very different cultural perspectives, and at this time I was just really interested to study, learn and understand the Turkish perspective. My parents, around the time of this recording, had bought another house way up in the mountains, one they'd ultimately keep until this year. And so they would go up to that one, and I would just kind of stay in the other house, and I would do my studying, do my reading, often try and get on the internet if it was functioning, mainly because I was in touch with education institutions in the UK. I referred earlier to a college in the south of England that do access courses. So if you don't have regular qualifications and you want to do an undergraduate course, often you can do these access courses that fill in for A-levels. So that was something I was really focusing on. I was also actually looking at Australian universities and universities around the world, but I was in touch especially with a series of universities at that time on the south coast.
Well, Mother and Dad are currently out at Chamley Bell, and I'm cooking my supper. No, I'm cooking my lunch, that's it. Got eggs boiling there, and I've got soup warming up, and it's all on the go. as I put the cutlery on the table and exciting things like that. It's got bread in the oven, which Mother cooked, which is nice. And I'm on holiday now. Ugel, my teacher, didn't actually tell me where she's going, but she's going there, wherever she's going, for a couple of weeks. And although I've got homework, which I've been busy working away on, and I've been learning new and important pieces of vocabulary, just things that I come across, like Yanadar, which means volcano, and I don't know, I see, Dunya Mirasa, which means World Heritage. I occasionally read things like the Kids National Geographic, which is published in Turkish. So you come across things like that. Garip ama Gerçek. It's strange but true. Our telephone line has been down for a month now, which is very annoying. Not just because I can't telephone, but because I also can't go on the email, of course. But I enjoy my forays on the internet. So I popped down to an internet cafe. I've done that twice now. And this time, I was very annoyed to find there weren't any emails waiting for me. I feel so abandoned. But whilst I was on there, I decided to look at YouTube. I had seen the owner of YouTube interviewed on BBC World talking about the new media, and I had to have a look at this new media. I'd never seen the new media, so I had a look on these YouTube websites and decided that the comedy was probably for me, and watched this kind of homemade video of an Oprah Winfrey kind of pastiche. It was very, very good. Trying to take it down in a very friendly kind of way. I enjoyed it.
There we have my first exposure to YouTube, some kind of home video that was a pastiche of Oprah Winfrey. Now if you'd like to see my home videos, then you can check them out on www.youtube.com/British Culture. All very exciting, but perhaps not quite as exciting to me at the time as my father's latest purchase.
It's a chainsaw. Dad brought one back from Chamley. Previously, we'd been breaking up the logs with an axe, which flies off the handle. So we had to put the axe on a crack in the wood and then hammer it through with a lump hammer. It was quite hard work. So now we have a chainsaw, and I'm having great fun with a chainsaw. And the YouTube site has been blocked by a Turkish judge, which will try and access it soon. Apparently it carried material insulting to Ataturk. My teacher, Ugel, went to Izmir for 2 weeks, and so I had a little holiday. It wasn't a complete holiday, she set me a bit of work, but it wasn't very much, and I decided to be an extra good bunny and do some extra work. The work that I set for myself was an essay entitled My Holiday, and I wrote it as best as I could, and now the holiday is over, I've been back, and my extra work, my essay, was so good that Ugel actually gave me an unqualified well done for the first time since I've started. I was absolutely delighted. Because I had so little work last week, I decided to do some which I had set all by myself. I decided to write a couple of exams, essays. I did How Life is Different from My Grandfather's, my favourite book, A Dream I Cannot Forget. Even I did so much work that even you went, whew, when she saw how much I had done. In fact, the quality was good enough. She said it's time to start thinking about exams over the next few weeks. And, well, we shall see over the next few lessons how that we're going to go through an exam paper, I think. But, turn up for the bus. It's May the 16th. It's pretty cloudy today, although summer is coming. And it's been raining the last few days. Otherwise, the main piece of news is that we have a brand new computer, so new and modern that it doesn't even have a floppy disk player, which means that though the internet's working, I can't write long letters to Francis and Douglas. I have to write them in the cafe, which is always me, making them a bit short and abrupt anyway. Apart from that one fault, which isn't really a fault, the march of the modern world, but apart from that, it is actually a fantastic computer. and I can put DVDs on it, and I've taken pictures from those DVD stills, and I've been playing with all the different bits for how you can alter them. Weeks ago, my Turkish teacher, Yücel, got quite angry with me because she said I had turned up to my lesson an hour late. I wasn't quite sure about it. I was not feeling my best, and so I didn't argue with it. And the next week, I did the same thing, and I held my ground and asked Mother to come along. And in the midst of explaining all this, Yücel suddenly realised that she'd made a mistake. That in fact I had not been an hour late, that I was right on time. So that out. But this week, on Tuesday, my ride instructor phoned me up and asked me where I was and why I hadn't turned up to the lesson, which I had thought was on a Wednesday. And so I got my appointment card, and sure enough the card which she had written said that I was to turn up on the Wednesday. Twice in a month. Coincidence. That was recorded all quite a while ago, before the temperature went beyond 40 centigrade. The holiday did me a great deal of good, and my work improved significantly. The last piece of work that I did was actually, well, even if I say so myself, quite brilliant. I can say that because she said it was. She gave me quite a bit of praise on it. It was an essay that I had written, and I was very pleased with it. And so was she, and now we've taken a holiday. The heat is just ridiculous. It shouldn't get beyond 40 degrees centigrade. It's the third highest temperature on record. The second highest in 2002, which I remember very well, and 1943, before my time. In fact, before Dad's time here, I think. Yes, it was, before him here. My holiday, however, has not been uneventful. I've been swimming a couple of times. I've read a Terry Pratchett book. And I've been on the internet quite a bit. Kane is still in contact with me. And, yeah, everything seems to be going pretty well. A couple of weeks have passed that recording in this, and in that time Mother has potted off to England and back. While she was away, I did all the cooking duties. Dad still maintains she doesn't know where the kitchen. I think I did much better this year than I have other years. It was far more, much better to eat. Though I still cooked too much for Dad from time to time, and once forgot that he didn't like peas. But apart from that, pretty well. I am pleased. Mother has brought back from England a very large amount of Star Wars things for me. So whilst Mother have their little holiday in Chamley together without the dogs, me, I have been dipping into the galaxy far, far away, generally having a very good time.
Listening back, it's interesting. I've often recorded these when there's some downtime, a lull, especially between phases in my academic work. So I often refer to holidays and downtime and sunbathing, which is nice to highlight those good memories in a time when I was recovering from illness and also struggling to fight my way forwards and get into a UK university. And learning Turkish was actually a big part of that. I refer to my friend Kane, and that is the same Kane who recorded a deep dive into tea, which was the first interview episode that I did, and we've done a number of deep dives since, so we really have been in contact since before I left England for Turkish Cyprus. We've been friends a good long time.
Since that last thing, I've had a trio of interesting jaunts out, the first of which was a wedding. I hadn't been to a Turkish wedding before, so it was interesting to watch them all line up, natter to people in Turkish, trying to do that over the noise of the band. It was a bit of a test of my Turkish, but I did pretty well, I think, so I'm happy with that. The second one was a wild night out in which I had my friend early in the morning. As with the last Turkish fortune I had, it was done over coffee with a friend. My coffee cup, when I'd finished, was turned upside down, and the remainder, the silt or whatever it is that's left afterwards, the grit, ran down and formed curious patterns. And it's those patterns which will... And apparently, I'm going to meet a beautiful girl, and be ever and ever, and she's going to be fat. I couldn't quite believe it last year when someone said it, but this year It was even stranger that it should be told to me the second time that I'm going to marry someone. I guess it's probably just a... Or maybe they're just trying to freak me. Maybe it's some Turkish joke that they're playing on me. But perhaps their convention. In England you have momentous decisions ahead. You'll find happiness with new love. And in Turkey, you're going to marry someone fat. The third great event so far has been popping down to the south and actually finding a rarely bookshop. It's called Mouflon's Bookshop. We've ordered 2 things for it. Looking around, it was fantastic. I've been trying to search for books on China. That's going to be part of the access course, the non-European history. And also just out of my general interest, more people live in China, North America and South America combined. It would be strange to be completely, or it should be strange to be ignorant of it, yet we are. So I've been looking up all sorts, but it's been hard to find books, but they had quite a good little selection of things. Rise of the Chinese Republic and biographies of Mao. Also a second edition of The 7 Pillars of Wisdom by Colonel Lawrence. That was a very expensive book. I don't think I'll be buying that, but not anytime soon. But in the meantime, I'll be saving up my pennies, the other ones that I saw. It was a good trip out.
Those references to going down to the south of Cyprus and finding a really good bookshop bring back a lot of memories now. As I mentioned, Turkish Cyprus was under an economic embargo for decades, and as a result, day to day, just getting your hands on a really good book could be quite difficult. Obviously, people bring things out in their suitcases. I refer to my mother bringing back lots of Star Wars things for me, which I'm still passionate about, by the way. But expats would do that for each other. So if a family member was visiting, you'd say, oh, please bring these books out, please bring a newspaper, and so on and so on. So it's part of the regular expat circuit, and became an expectation that if anyone came out, they would bring a book, just because it's so difficult to get really good books out there. And there was a British expats kind of library, especially for the Carina Animal Rescue, so it was possible to get these things, but it was difficult. And so just to go down south and see a really good bookshop, well, still stays in the mind.
A certain hiatus has passed between that last recording and that. That's because after a night of being very badly bitten, I got sand fever. I started off feeling as if it was snowing on, and I had terrible stomach pains, and then it felt as if I was in an oven, and then after having it snow on personally me, and basically went back for a while, completely exhausting me, and I've spent the past few weeks tired and ill and not very well. So, I have now waterborne diseases and insect-borne disease, so I can say that I have now travelled.
The fever that I refer to is sand fly fever, and this is something that's quite common in North Africa, less common in Italy, and was virtually unheard of in Cyprus until that time when I'm recording. That was the first kind of outbreak that anyone could recall in living memory. It's very, very intense, 3 to 4 days, and then after that, intense debilitation. I don't know how else to describe it. There's lots of references to it, by the way, if you're interested in the Second World War, the Napoleonic War, and the North Africa campaign, funnily enough. But it's incredibly debilitating for 3 to 4 months. To my mind, the most remarkable thing about it, and this was commonly said on the island, I haven't really come across this in medical journals or anything else. I work in academic publishing. I haven't seen this written. But the debilitation just suddenly ends. 3 or 4 months afterwards, you just wake up one day and it's entirely gone. It's not a slow recovery and you don't notice it. It's just suddenly gone. It is what Tolkien referred to as a eucatastrophe, a sudden, extraordinary change of events for the better. At this time, I also learned that my Turkish teacher, with whom you can hear I feel very good rapport, she had become very, very sick indeed, to the point where she could no longer teach. And we tried to stay in touch as much as we could, but we realised it became a great effort for her towards the end to be in touch. So I sent the best letters, the best cards I could to her as a final goodbye. And of course, I had to carry on. I had to get the qualifications I needed to get back home to the UK.
Looking in the paper, I noticed that there was a Turkish teacher in the nearest village at Alcoy, so we arranged to meet up with him. I was quite impressed with him, and so was Mother. He spent a long time in the US, and has taught people Turkish before. He seems a good chap. He says, I think that he hasn't taught people at such a high level before, but obviously we'll just have to see how that goes. I have been looking in the newspaper for jobs, and have applied for a couple. Unfortunately, none of them have come out well, but I'm just to keep looking, and hopefully something will turn up. It could be a mercy that I haven't got anything, since after all, I'm still not feeling very well, but I would quite like something, because I just want the cash. Obviously it would also be nice to have something good to do, and something beyond hanging up the washing and washing the dogs, who I washed a little while ago. It's Wednesday, December the 19th. It's a sunny day and I'm sitting here, admittedly in jeans and fleece, but it's very pleasant. I don't have a huge amount to report, as I've been pretty ill with this sandfly fever, which has lasted months as everyone predicted. I have had a few nice trips out. I went over and had drinks with Anna a couple of weeks ago, and I invited her back to have dinner here with Mother and Dad. I thought it would be nice to have the fire on, but our sitting room fires have become progressively smokier over the years, so I was given the job of cleaning the chimney. There are no small boys with brooms here. I used the giant blue bin bag to seal off the fireplace and clambered onto the roof with a hose pipe. Feeding it down the chimney, I knocked the soot and ash down into the fireplace. Mother was getting everything ready for the royal visit. At this time, I was a little disappointed by the tiny pile of soot that had come down. I'd hoped for something a trifle more spectacular. But when I lit the fire, piles and piles of ash fell down, turning the white marble fireplace black as black. Half the room was soot-covered, and I needed a shovel to clear the bulk of it. Then, it all needed sweeping and cleaning and polishing. By the time Anna arrived, it was all clean as clean could be, and not the tiniest bit of smoke came into the room. So it was a job well done. I have become a little better as the weeks have passed, but I haven't been able to go to any of my lessons this academic term, which is a little depressing. But there you go.
And that was the final recording. My depression at not being able to go to a class, my academic focus. Of course, I would later be able to go to those classes, and I'd get my Turkish to such a high level that in fact the GCSE was far, far below my level. I get an A star, the highest award that you could get, and there was no other qualification above that level at that time. I was able to go to Bradford University because they had a foundation year in combined studies. I would do my undergraduate, I'd do teacher training, and would go into education full-time. Ultimately, I would teach at the University of Bradford. It's a module here and a module there, not a huge amount. Well, I would be a full-time lecturer in English, and perhaps some of these recordings shed light onto why that remains one of my proudest life achievements. I hope these slice of life clips, these recordings from 2006, 2007 are interesting. I found them interesting to listen to, but of course it's me and my life. But it was a very, very different life growing up in the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus and working so hard to get back to the UK. Interesting that I would refer to my interest in Chinese history and wanting to find out more about China, because I felt there's so many people living there and I knew nothing about it. I think that's partly influenced by the fact that I was studying such an unusual language that I thought, well, what's the most spoken language? Of course I would live there for 6 years, and Kane, who I referred to in an earlier message, well, he would live there for 10 years. Quite a trip down memory lane. Thank you very much for joining me. Let me know what you think. You can message me at FlemingNeverDies on Instagram. Just email me albinneverdies@gmail.com. Thank you.